What is up with Isaiah Thomas's hip injury? Can the Cavaliers survive if he can't play? How good are the Vegas odds makers over-under predictions? The only question left is, say it with me, you win. Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. As always, on Wednesdays, I am pleased to bring in to the show James Hollis, a.k.a. @SnottyDrippin' on Twitter. And again, James, glad to have you here on a slightly uneventful, Tuesday evening for Wednesday podcast. What's going on?
I mean, we know Thursday's coming quick. That Cavs Boston deal has to get finalized, or it might fall to pieces. But other than that, it's dog days of summer. You know how that goes. We're arguing about, we're arguing KD versus Kobe all time and all kind of nonsense. We're just having fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all sorts of arguments that keep getting rear up. You know what's funny is that, we will, let's hype it now. We're going to do eventually at some point soon a Russ, you and me and Russ podcast. But it did come up again. It had been a while since anyone had really kind of gotten on me about it. But I think it's interesting because I almost feel like either a lot of the Russell Westbrook fans that just simply don't follow me anymore on Twitter, or maybe it felt like it was kind of quiet last year. I don't think I was on Russ as much as people, as much as I had been in the past this past year, and rightfully so. He had a really great year, so it wasn't like I was sitting here, trying to shit on his season. So, but it did feel, and every once in a while I'd see something that really drives me crazy, and I just feel like it was a lot quieter in the response than it used to be.
Well, yeah, because you didn't say anything. But on the flip side of that, I think I did a quick scan, and I think during Curry's MVP year, you did 12 videos that were related to Curry. And I think during Russ's, you did 4. So, Coach, I get it, Coach. I know we have starkly different views on Russell Westbrook and his game and what he means to the NBA. So we definitely should have it out in one episode.
All right, we will.
I don't think you treat Russell Westbrook very fairly.
All right. Well, by the way, that does bring up a little bit of I don't want it to take up too much of ours that I would use for the actual pod, but it did come up in a sense of from a coaching standpoint. I wanted to kind of relate this because it was hard to explain in a tweet. But I think the best example I might have is that I had a player who was a junior who he was kind of like Manu in a way, lefty, very unconventional, and I was on him the whole year long as a junior, just grinding him and trying to get him to play better and smarter and all those different things. And he got through that and he kind of learned. And then by his senior year, he had afforded that kind of leeway to I didn't have to get on him as much. He understood his role. He was much more consistent and so I didn't have to get on him for hardly anything for that reason. I had a new assistant that year who was still trying to scream at him like he was a freshman, and he was getting really frustrated by that. And I had to try and explain to my coach, I'm like, listen, he went through that already. We already did that, and he was consistently, he understands what he needs to do. There's no sense in getting on him. Did that make sense? So I almost feel like when we're comparing, I'm much more brutal, on Steph versus Russ. Part of me kind of feels that way, where it's on the defensive end, I just feel like Steph Curry is more consistent in his defensive play. So I might not jump on him as much as I might with Russ, who I just see continually doing those things. And I don't know.
But see, by the same token, though, if we're saying that, you could say, Russell Westbrook's been in the league 10 years now, so he's a senior. So if you're still harping on him, you're the assistant coach now. Instead of appreciating what he does great, you're still harping on the stuff you did the first season. It's not going to change. So I get that as a coach, you want to see certain things different fundamentally. But my thing is, as an NBA fan, as somebody who really appreciates the game and for the warts and all, I appreciate the fact that Russell Westbrook gets things done at a high level, even if it's not quite so efficient. So that's where we differ. Right.
Yeah, and by the way, and I'm focusing right now just on the defensive end, which is I think something different because offensively, you're right. There's a lot of things that he can overcome stuff and do things that are unconventional or you wouldn't want anyone ever to do, and he can still make that shot or still make that pass and complete the play. But the defensive end, there are times when people call me out for not calling out certain people. I'm like, well, because I saw he got backdoored on that one. All right, it's bad defense. I get it. But it doesn't happen very often. And for whatever reason.
But wouldn't that mean that you should bring it up then, because it's actually something to report on? If it didn't happen, you see what I'm saying? It's like instead of harping on the guy who never does it, it seems like you'd be like, oh, and this doesn't normally happen, but here he is getting beat up. See, so you give guys leeway because you like them more or you appreciate them more, and that doesn't seem to be right.
Well, listen, this is America, but either way, I mean, that's it's interesting take, and I guess I can kind of see where you're coming from. I just feel like no, I mean, listen, it's like if the guy keeps doing it, is sort of when I'm like, listen, look what this guy keeps doing. You guys are all missing. Now part of the reason with the Russ thing is also that there is this myth that he is just a great defender, and that was always sort of. And remember, there's always the notion that he's a great finisher at the rim, and the numbers don't really back that up. He's good. He's just not like an elite, amazing finisher. Like the percentages don't show that. So now,
my problem with that was a great video you did about his finishing. My problem with that though is you slowly went from he's an average to slightly above average finisher, but then it turned into he's a poor finisher for the volume, and so you turn it to a negative. That's my whole point. You find a way to slant the things just enough to show that you're just not. I know you're just not a fan of his game. I get it, but I mean, All right. Well,
let's save this conversation for later because it was a nice teaser for when we do it soon. So we're gonna have a good one. It'll be a really great debate.
Don't worry, Thunder. Don't worry, Thunder fans. I'm going to stand up for our guy because I'm a Russell Westbrook fan.
And besides, I'm feeling my Twitter feed is a little bit lean right now, so I definitely want to try and get some of those Russell Westbrook fans back into the timeline. I feel like it's just worth it for business. Republicans got to buy shoes too. So all right, let's talk a little bit about Isaiah Thomas because. This thing is, I know we've been talking about it a lot from more to the KYRIE side. It almost feels like in the podcast recently, but obviously there's a lot of stuff going on as far as what was revealed, what wasn't revealed with his hip injury. I think it's fair to say at this point, even just from like the basic reporting you see, that whatever they said about Isaiah Thomas's injury to the Cavaliers wasn't accurate.
I actually read today that and this is obviously two sides to every story. Coming more from the Boston side, the reporters are saying all reports are this is exactly what we reported. I remember reading myself back in June, maybe early July. Danny Ainge was still saying, "Hey, surgery's still on the table. We don't know yet exactly how this is going to pan out."
Right.
So, I mean, it seems like a quick Bleacher Report search by the Cleveland Cavaliers, they could have figured out anything they needed to figure out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll never know the whole story, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Brad Stevens said the same thing too about surgery wasn't off the table either. I saw like a tweet about it, so I'm assuming, of course, it must be right. But I think that also. I mean, listen, it's perfectly reasonable to say, listen, they said it, he might need surgery, it's this and that, whatever, and then they finally got the films, and that's a whole different story. Which you don't get the films, you don't get to look at the patient until the trade goes down. So
sure.
And it's funny not to compare myself to an elite athlete like Isaiah Thomas, but I had hip replacement surgery and hip problems going from when I was in early at 22, 23, and dealing with it for 18 years or so before I finally had surgery. I mean, actually, I think I heard it when I was like 20. So at any rate, so I'm sort of familiar, maybe a little bit more than the layman, about what's going on here. And my concern was we had seen reports in December of him injuring his groin. And a lot of times when you have a hip injury like I did, I ended up having bone on bone eventually and it needed surgery, it presents like a groin injury. And I thought I tore my groin muscle for a year, and I finally called my doctor and said, "Get me an MRI. I gotta know what's going on. I'm like in terrible pain. But I'm playing basketball, not exactly like Isaiah, but I would hurtle headlong into the paint. I'd be pushing it as fast as I could. I mean, I just had no care for my body. And Isaiah's kind of like that. He just goes all out, and he's just all over the place because he has to because he's shorter. So that is my really big concern, is that this could very well turn into something, especially when you're talking about this late into after the injury, that this could be the kind of thing where he's leading toward arthritis, he's leading toward any kind of surgery. That he could have missed the whole year.
Yeah, and that's we don't want to speculate, obviously, right, and put undue fear into it. But obviously, it looks like he's going to miss time to start the season. That's what it sounds like. Even Stevens said the same thing. Brad Stevens before the trade, there's a chance he misses time going into the season. The question is how much, I guess, and maybe the Cavs are now thinking it'll be too much. So it's a dicey situation. And now here's the thing: I just saw an article on this. Let me ask you this: as good as Isaiah is, and as good as he would be this season with LeBron James, let's talk about it. I mean, that 18 pick is going to be pretty juicy. Jay Crowder is a great player too. Like, if Isaiah misses this whole season, what does the Celtics have to do to either make this a fair trade? And I mean, is Isaiah even the centerpiece of this trade? What are we talking here?
I mean, it's because it seems like what's going to happen is they're not going to give up anything of a significant value now. Maybe they'll throw a second rounder in there, right? But if that's the case, I mean, just to take a half step back from that, what are they going to have then? The Cavs are going to have Derrick Rose starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I guess, yeah.
I just went through. I'm doing a big video on the Knicks and the death of the triangle offense and why it never had anything to do with the triangle. And by the way, it's really revealing when you really watch a lot of Knicks footage, which I really hadn't done, certainly not in one sitting. I don't know, man. I think I gave some sunshine to Derrick Rose the last time we talked. Like I thought maybe he had a better year than people thought. But oh my God, having gone through, I don't know, about 500 half-court possessions right now today. Like, it's not good. And I don't see how he fits in as a starter on that team because you need a guy to shoot from that position, and it's really not good.
So let me ask you this, and you tell me how wrong I am. He wasn't bad getting to the hole. He had tunnel vision. He shot a lot of bad mid-range pull-ups, and he didn't really get back defensively.
Yeah, and then, by the way, I wasn't even watching the defensive stuff, but yeah, I can kind of see like in the end of the plays and stuff. Yeah, I mean, offensively, his jump shot is broke. It really is just, he shoots his torso's in front of his legs. He loses all that energy when he's jumping, and he hangs in the air a lot of the time. It's just nothing. I mean, at this point of his career, I don't think it's going to improve. I think it is what it is. He jumps in the air to pass almost every time, which leads to some turnovers. The finishing seemed okay. Like I did see some whoa, that was some nice explosion, whatever, but it's not always. And it's just not the kind of player they need. Because he's not going to bring the ball up every single time and get a pick and roll right on top like he was doing quite a bit of. I just that frightens me the most. No matter, even if they have Jay Crowder who's going to help and they get that pick later, it's for this year, like Jesus, are they? I don't even know. Do they make the Eastern Conference Finals with Derrick Rose as their starting point guard?
Whew. I mean, it depends on how much you think LeBron has in the tank, right? I don't. Can LeBron James and Jay Crowder and Kevin Love beat the Washington Wizards? Can they beat the Toronto Raptors?
I'm thinking of John Wall going up against Derrick Rose. Now, remember, to be fair, Isaiah Thomas might be back by then. But then again, okay, picture that. John Wall going up against Isaiah Thomas.
I mean, he just did it last series, and he gave John Wall 50-something points. So, that's right. I mean...
that is true. That's the weirdest series of all time. I couldn't figure out what was going on because it seemed like the Wizards should have had it, right? Like it kind of felt like the way they matched up and what they had. I don't know what happened there, but okay, that's fair enough. So Isaiah was able to do something there, and they cover that stuff, and they'd be better with Jay Crowder to kind of help with rotations and whatever too. So okay, that's something there. But you're right; it also depends on LeBron. It's a titanic effort from him to be able to cover for that as well. But I don't know, man. It just seems like it would be a whole other ball of wax.
I guess my main thing is that with LeBron James-led super teams, right? It seems like there's about a 4-year expiration date where they kind of get tired of each other and LeBron gets the wandering eye.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I mean, look, it happened in Miami. Year 4 was that year where they were kind of stale. They just seemed to be kind of laboring through the season, and then they got blown out by the Spurs, and then he left. This is year 4 coming up here with Cleveland, and I like that the Isaiah team kind of shakes up that lineup and gives them a little injection. Jay Crowder and Isaiah gives a little injection of reinvigoration of that lineup if Isaiah can come back and be who he used to be. So that's going to be the question.
Yeah, and if the trade doesn't go through, which I suppose is, what do you think the odds are of the trade getting canceled?
Just based on just my pure gut, I mean, they've already invested so much time and energy and effort into it. I feel like it almost has to go through. They got to find a way to make it work because you can't send either one of these players back to their teams and say, "Hey, man, my bad. Let's go ahead and start the season."
Right. I mean, yeah, and then in theory they just get right back on the horn and try and make another trade, right? If that did happen, but yeah, that just all right. So, and I hear you. That's how it feels as well. I feel like the Celtics do have a ton of second rounders. Maybe they throw like a couple of them in there or something like that just to kind of get it done. But you know, it also felt like they gave that Nets first round pick anyway because of the possible Isaiah Thomas injury being more severe than they thought it was going to be. So. You know, it's that. Yeah, that's why the Celtics are probably already pissed off to all high hell because, you know, this is right. Like this is already disclosed. They gave more than they should have anyway. So I think you're right. The Cavs are probably just sort of posturing a little bit, and then they're going to make it happen. But again, you know, if Isaiah can't get healthy by the playoffs, it's gonna. I would be. I don't know what I would do. I might have to drive up to Vegas and put some money down against him. And speaking of that, I'm reminded that football season is back, which means FanDuel is ready to make each week even more exciting with a chance to cheer for your favorite players and win money doing it. Over 2.5 million players have won cash prizes playing fantasy sports on FanDuel. And you can join their ranks by heading over to FanDuel.com, click the Join Now button, and use my code CoachNick, all one word. This allows you to try FanDuel for free with no deposit required and get in on a chance to win $10,000. There is something for everyone on FanDuel. Lots of contests to choose from. So sign up now at FanDuel.com, use my code CoachNick, and get your first free contest. Void where prohibited.
I mean, like I said, the fan in me is already going to put down money against him. I don't care if he's healthy or not. I like Boston's depth. I like their versatility. The fan in me definitely thinks that they have a shot this year, a lot better than they had last year.
They do. They do. And again, if they can gel and all those chemistry questions that that you have with a completely new roster, and I need to go dig into the stats because I feel like we're going to maybe write an article about this. I don't think a number one seed has ever had this much turnover on a roster from over to the next year. It's crazy.
Four returning players right now. I guess Gerald Green is still he doesn't have a contract, so yeah, that is pretty wild, and it does give me pause. You know, it takes a lot of reps to build up that kind of chemistry to be a contender. So we'll see, though. I got faith in him. Yeah,
and Gerald Green right now is busy driving around Houston saving people. So he's got his hands full, which is that flew by my timeline. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And in fact, the whole thing is pretty crazy. Have you seen those images of people just saving people on their boats?
I have, and that's that gives us a little bit of hope for in some troubled times here in the U.S. right now. That people still look out for each other. And people still go above and beyond. So my thoughts, obviously, Coach, same thing. Our thoughts are with the people in Houston right now. Right
now, I'm gonna Russell Westbrook this one for a second because I'm curious. Aren't you a little bit concerned of just how many people are being saved by local, or not even local, by every ordinary citizens as opposed to like our government?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. It's both inspiring and kind of troubling and damning. It doesn't speak well to where we are right now. So we're not going to dive into a deep political kind of conversation. But I mean, let's be real. Yeah.
I'm waiting. There's probably someone doing some reporting right now who's going to find out that it's like, that's why it's very heartwarming and heroic and incredible. However, it's like I kind of want to see the professionals in there who really know how to do this and and go in there and safely ferry people out of there and stuff. It's crazy. So at any rate, we shall see how that plays out. And I wish everyone the best in Houston and all those areas around there. It's going to hit them again, it sounds like. So hopefully it's not as bad and the worst is over. So well, let's move on in a way that we can to some other news in the NBA. I suppose do you want to talk about the over-under that's come out from Vegas recently?
Yeah, it's always interesting to look at the over-unders. I don't know if I have it in me to do like a full – I was thinking about writing something about this for BYBreakdown.com. I don't know if I have it in me to do a full breakdown, but maybe pick out a few of the more like noticeable ones and maybe I'm looking right now at who I see they're just way off on.
Who do you think?
Let me ask you, Golden State, they got their over-under at 67.5. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it depends on what they're going to do because they already went through a season of 73 wins, didn't win the championship that way, and whether or not they value making another huge run at an amazing record. That said, they're going to make an assault on that anyway, just by virtue of all the talent that they have. Because remember, they improved arguably more than anybody else, and they already had the best team maybe of all time. So, I would have to imagine. I mean, they're going to win at least. I mean, you got to say it's 65, don't you?
I think they can almost walk their way to 70, like no problem. I'd almost be hitting that over. Even if they take their time and they don't push for it and they kind of rest. I mean, I think Durant missed, 20 games last season?
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of games. It took him a while to adjust without him. So let's say he stays relatively healthy and the big four stay relatively healthy. I think they can almost moonwalk to 70 wins.
Yeah, I hear you. And they're going to really make sure they give Iguodala rest and Livingston rest. But that means you're going to give some more time to guys like McCaw, who looks to me ready to go and fill that role really well. And then they already have guys who are going to come in like Omri Caspi and even like Jordan Bell looks like he could be a guy who can follow right in Draymond's steps. So yeah, you're right. It's interesting. I don't know if I would say over. That's really tough. That's a real razor. Hard to go over. But I hear you loud and clear. It's going to be really close, if not. So I might say 6, 7.5. I might say under, but it's going to be close. But I hear you over. That's interesting. What else grabs you?
What else do I like to look here? Let's see what else we got. I don't know. There's some good ones. Miami last year won 41. They got them at 42.5. Do you think the Heat make the playoffs this year pretty easily? And is that a little low? 42.5.
It's very intriguing. Wait, I got to remind myself who did they add this offseason so far?
Only Kelly Olynyk.
Oh yeah.
And then they brought back Dion. They brought back James Johnson. So they're basically running it back with they added Kelly as a backup.
Yeah, no, I like their team. Obviously, health is going to be a big deal, but coming back and having more, I would agree they're going to win more games. I would say they're probably going to win maybe like 4 more games instead of 1 more game. So yeah, that should be the playoffs easily. I mean, right now with the over/under here, they're going to be 6th in the East, and that sounds really reasonable. It's going to be intriguing because even a team like Milwaukee, where they're over and under, they have it 5th in the Eastern Conference with 44.5 wins. Now that's interesting because I think that they're poised to do bigger and better things. The only problem is I think Jabari Parker isn't going to be ready until later in the season, right?
That's correct. I guess I heard around January, February timeframe.
Yeah.
The thing about that is they took off once he got hurt. They actually started doing better when Middleton hit the lineup and Jabari got hurt that same game. Where they kind of found their footing there, and that's one of those odd kind of things.
It is true. It is true. But talent always helps. But yeah, so I would think that maybe it's a little bit low for the Milwaukee Bucks.
I think I agree with you. I wish we're doing our listeners a disservice. We didn't look it up to see how many they won last year to kind of compare it.
We can do that really quickly. I mean, I can grab the standings from last year. So last year, the Milwaukee Bucks won 42 games.
Okay, so see that.
Now they're saying
what did they really add though? They got Thon's going to be his second year, so he should be a little more productive and a little better. The whole year of Middleton, that's going to help. He came back.
Really
I think he missed. So that's I think maybe more than 2 games, right? Yeah, it's probably a little low. I think it might be a little low.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think they're going to win a few more of the games. Again, it could be razor thin. I have a feeling that the 5th through 8th spots are going to be really bunched up, and that's what we see even in the over/unders right now. And that's okay. It should give us a really exciting end of the season in that stretch to see who's going to get where. And then it kind of feels like no one's really talked too much about it now, but it's Cleveland kind of tanked the end of the season. I felt like to avoid Washington. It kind of felt that way, although they kind of got buried amongst all the other stories. But did you feel that way?
I don't believe that a team like Cleveland would try to duck another team. So I have a hard time believing that. But I mean, I'll trust that. I'll trust your word on if you think you saw it. I think they just did not care. I think they didn't care until they reached the playoffs and they said, okay, let's care now.
All right, because that ending of the season for Cleveland wasn't great. That's what allowed the Celtics to take the number 1 spot. Just, and it could very well have just been that they lost those games or whatever, but it just seemed to me that their defense in the transition, which I'm sure everyone knew, I mean, we were harping on it all year long, like the only team that could threaten them in that situation would have been John Wall led, and Bradley Beal, those guys running down the court fast and killing them. And I think, there's an interesting argument for that, and it worked for him. So whether or not they meant to do it, but it'll be, and that's why it'll be fascinating, because as that thing gets bunched up down there, you have to imagine that there will be some attention to that paid by Cleveland and Boston, or maybe not Boston as much, but certainly those matchups.
Now, another thing we're talking about, to hinge back to what we were talking about earlier, the Cavaliers and the trade and the pick. I mean, right now Brooklyn, I don't see. People are saying that Brooklyn might be better than people think, and I don't see it. Right now, their over-under is 20, and then teams like Atlanta is 34. The Bulls are 28, and that seems almost like to make sense to me. Am I crazy here? Because one of the theories is that Danny Ainge believes the Nets are going to be better than, and the pick's going to be like 7-8 range, and that's why he was all right with flipping that pick. I'm looking at the Brooklyn roster and the rest of the East. I don't know if I see that.
Well, here's the interesting thing about Brooklyn, because I really didn't watch too much of them at all last year, but I did.
I don't blame you.
What's that?
I don't blame you at all. They
right.
were very good.
Well, but I'd heard stuff about, they're doing some good space and pace offense, and they're doing this and stuff, whatever, and I was like, all right. So I did have the occasion this summer to go through a whole bunch of shots by one of their players, and I was startled by how bad it was. Like, their offense was just a haphazard, I didn't even recognize what they were doing. So it's really frustrating. I'm wondering, does the coach know what he's doing? Now, I know maybe they're not, and they were not incentivized to lose either, because they didn't have that pick, but still. So the question now is, even playing the way they played, if you improve the talent level, then you are going to win some more games. It might not be like a Brad Stevens squeezes an extra. He'll give you 3 wins just by him there, right? By squeezing extra plays at the end of the games, whatever. So I don't know if Atkinson's that kind of guy. But at the very least, they won 20 games last year. Right now they're picking them at 20.5 again this year. I think that's silly. I think that they will win more games this year. I mean, I love what they did as far as adding Alan Crabb. D'Angelo Russell has a chance to prove himself with a chip on his shoulder. I would imagine he's going to be better than he was. And that's already a big improvement. Now, I know they lost Lopez, but I don't know. They could probably, match that with some high energy rebounding and some good defense and make up for it. So I think that's off. I feel like the Nuggets will win. I mean, the Nets will win, 25 games, 24 games, 25, right?
I don't know. But I think Brook Lopez, like you said, sure, they lost him and they replaced him with some other perimeter talent. But he was really good last year. I think he averaged over 20 and 6, 20. He's never a strong rebounder, but he was shooting threes. He used his size around the rim to, sure, they weren't a great defensive team at all, but, he was a good player on a terrible team. And I don't know if the additions of a role player like Alan Crabb, and I don't know if D'Angelo Russell's ready to turn into that kind of player yet. I will give you this, though. If Jeremy Lin can stay healthy, then they definitely should be better than they were last year. I don't know if they're going to be 4 or 5 games better. Right.
And Mozgov is there. And listen, I've been kind of waiting for Mozgov to finally, show a consistent ability where he's shown, flashes. I mean, there were moments in that finals with Cleveland where he was really good and he was really hurting the Warriors. And so, but then again, right. So what would he give you? At best, he's going to give you maybe 10 points and 9 rebounds, right, and a block or so. That at best.
For sure.
Now, so that's about half of what you get from Lopez or whatever, right, or something like that. So, you're right. That's going to be an issue because as you're looking at their roster, they really don't have any other centers, which is kind of maybe okay. They can come. Oh, by the way, they also have DeMarre Carroll.
If he can stay on the court, he hasn't really been healthy his last 2 or 3 years with his time in Toronto, right? So that's going to be the big thing to watch with him. And then when he's on the court, let's see how effective he was. I don't think he was very effective at all in Toronto. Yeah. He was always kind of working back from injury. So this is a year for him, I guess, to get back on track.
And he was also the best player in the Hawks, the number 1 seed on the Hawks of that a couple of years ago.
He was maybe the most vital piece because he was that defensive 3 wing. But don't forget, they still had Paul Millsap and and Al Horford there. So I don't know if he was the best. He was up there. He was good.
Right. I mean, and as far as production, he was scoring about 20 a game, and they're pretty much their best defender. And then he went down. That was brutal for them. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of tantalizing stuff here. Where crap, if Damari is healthy and so is Jeremy Lin, and they get that whole roster going, they can win. That's going to really screw up that pick for the Cavs.
Think so? What do you think? Let's say in the best case scenario for the Nets, where does that pick end? Right,
because you're right. 20 games, like even if they improve 5 games, that's still the second worst record in the league. So you're right. It's still a good shot, but so they'd have to get to like 30 wins to make that a real problem, where you have 6-7 teams in front of them. And that seems like a stretch, but I don't know. I feel like if they're all healthy, they could they would probably be in the running to get close to 30. I would say, which is terrible, but still
okay.
It's still. Think about it.
I'll say, as a Celtics fan, I would love for that to happen. I love for the pick to turn to something that's not very useful to Cleveland.
Are you an anti-Cavaliers fan? Is that what you're saying?
I hated them moving the pick. I hated Boston moving the pick because, like I said, Danny Ainge held on to that pick like Scrooge McDuck holds on to a quarter for years, and all of a sudden to toss it in with other really good assets for Kyrie Irving, that was kind of a weird thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then this also brings us to the Western Conference, where we should talk a little bit about, there are going to be some teams that are going to improve. It seems pretty clear. And obviously, if that happens, then someone's going to have to drop down. And it's a real interesting conundrum because there are teams that are going to not make the playoffs that should probably merit it. And it will probably be significantly better than the 8th spot in the East.
It's really tough because Memphis is a perennial playoff team, and this might be the year they're abandoning grit and grind. Portland, I like Portland, but I think moving Crabbe's going to hurt them more than we know. He was probably their best shooter, and he opened up the floor for Dame and CJ, and he's gone. They didn't replace him with anybody. New Orleans, and we all know that, Solomon Hill's just a role player, but he was that kind of glue guy for them. Even if he's not a great shooter, he was that wing for them. And he's out now. He's probably going to miss the season, they're saying. So that's going to really be a blow to their lineups. Los Angeles, we're not sure what they have in Los Angeles yet, right? They lost Chris Paul, but they got a lot of – we're going to see almost like the Ewing theory. They lost Chris Paul, but they replaced him with a bunch of role players. Let's see if Blake Griffin can step up. So it's I think the bottom half of the West is going to be very interesting this year.
Yeah. Now the Vegas has Denver in the 6th spot with 43.5 wins, and last year they won 40 and they missed the playoffs narrowly. So that seems to be the biggest team that they feel like is going to improve the most. It looks like I got to compare some more, but that's an interesting team. And you're right. Like there's your Millsap right there for you with a good coach and a nice promising nucleus. What do you think? You think Denver is going to make that big of a run?
I don't know if it's going to be that big a run. I do think they're much improved. I think Paul Millsap is like on the border as a borderline superstar. Sure, he's not LeBron James. He's not Kevin Durant. He's not Steph Curry. But he has really no holes in his offensive game, and he's still a strong defender, even if he's getting a little older. My whole problem with Denver as a whole, though, is the team defense. If Jokic is your center, is not a good defender, he's not a strong defender, that's going to kind of, it's going to kind of hemorrhage everywhere else. So that's going to be interesting to see with Denver.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, do you want to get into it again about what a superstar is?
Sure. We talk a little bit about what a superstar is.
We got a couple minutes here. We can talk about it because, I know Mark Cuban made some waves, and I'm trying to get him on the show to talk about it too. But, here's my take. I think that because people, I know, I got into it on Twitter with some people, and it was really frustrating because people get so dumb sometimes. But basically, the idea is that you got to have you need to have the commercial appeal. You need to be able to have that smile and that charisma and that those commercials that really capture that. So like Blake Griffin, for instance, has that for the superstar status. Now I don't know if he's played that as to superstar level or not, but if you're talking about like Kawhi, for instance, doesn't really have that. So I would say he's a top 3 player in the league. He's a star, but I don't know if I'd put him as a superstar. You know what I mean?
I see, and I don't like. This is why I have a problem with that definition. Because by this definition, Tim Duncan is a Hall of Famer, all-time greatest power forward ever, but not a superstar. And that just doesn't work for me.
I think Tim Duncan would have no problem in saying that, too. He probably would have been like, right? But it doesn't matter. It's not what Tim Duncan thinks. It's what we all think, I guess, right?
Right, and so for you to tell me Tim Duncan wasn't a superstar in his prime, that doesn't make any sense. And I get it though. A lot of people use off-court popularity as part of their superstar predictions. I don't think so. I think when I say superstar, I'm talking about on-court production. I'm talking about there's a handful of players who you put them on any team and you're going to go, probably deep into the playoffs. And that's why LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard are my bona fide, no doubt superstars. And hey, I'm the biggest Russ fan out there. You know this, Coach. But still, I say Russell Westbrook and James Harden are borderline superstars because while they bring it, marketing, they both bring it, right? I think Westbrook had one like the top, 5 selling jerseys in the league this year. I still think I know that they both sometimes have flaws in their games. We both saw it, right? Against Houston, OKC, Russ just could not really put his team on his back and get things done that he need. Hey, he did everything he could. I get it. Against the Spurs, when Houston definitely should have won, when Kawhi went out, James Harden couldn't get it done. I say they're borderline superstars because regular season they both bring everything you need. We kind of didn't, I give them on the cusp of superstardom. So yeah, there's 4 bona fide superstars.
That's hilarious. It's funny because Russell Westbrook in my mind would be a top superstar because his commercials are that good. Because I kind of use Michael Jordan as sort of the poster child for this because he had that charisma that people just wanted to be near him, and he would do these great commercials, and you'd just be like riveted by him. And I gotta tell you that the Russell Westbrook commercials are amazing. What was the one where the guy drinks and then his shirt becomes really ugly and he goes, what does he say to him? That's so hilarious. That's whack, dude. Whatever he says, you know what I mean? After he's done drinking the Mountain Dew, I mean, or when he's gliding across the pavement and into the club or whatever, and those are awesome. Like that is superstardom. And then throw in the fact that he averaged triple double, that puts him right in there. James Harden too, because James Harden has some funny stuff as well. I don't know, and then so I don't know. I just feel like Kawhi and Tim Duncan, those guys don't quite get into that category. And the funny thing is, I don't think either of those guys would care.
Well, so let me ask you this. Let's say Michael Jordan was just a quiet guy and he didn't have the Jordans, but he played the exact same way. Are you telling me he wouldn't be an NBA superstar? People would tune in to see him every game. But, I mean, just because he wouldn't smile and make commercials, that just doesn't seem right to me.
No, I know. It's not fair, right? It's not. Kawhi Leonard is a quiet guy. He doesn't have that charisma. It's not, it's just people are born with it, or I mean, I guess you can kind of get it coaxed out of you or something. But you're right. It's not fair. I guess I can't look at it that way because Michael Jordan was that way, and he set the standard, and that's sort of what I want to hold up people to do because a superstar you have to have some standard there. I mean, listen, Tim Duncan. I have no problem, in my way, acknowledging that Tim Duncan was a top 5 player of all time or top 8 player of all time, whatever he is, right? Kawhi's a top 3 player in the league right now. And the dumbest thing about this is people are yelling at me like I don't believe Kawhi is any good. I was on Kawhi Island before anybody. I mean, I was a guy saying right when he went to the Spurs, I was like, this guy is going to be average 25 a game, and no one believed me. And here we are. So I guess it's weird. I know it's hard to process those two things. That's how I see it. It's hard for me to make the theoretical that Michael wouldn't have been that way and I wouldn't consider him a superstar. The bottom line is he set that standard, and that's sort of what I hold people to, I guess.
So is Nick Young a superstar? Nick Young is one of the most Hollywood guys out there, and he's well known for charisma. You're not calling Nick Young a superstar,
right?
Are you?
No, and this is the dumb argument I had on Twitter with people because of course not. He doesn't play you got to have the play as well. You can't just have the charisma and the commercials because that doesn't count. You got to have the triple double average and the charisma combined, right? Can you follow that?
Coach, you're a wild guy, man.
What? I mean, that seems reasonable to me, right? That's why I don't understand. That's like saying, well, we can't allow. Well, this is not like saying this, but anyway, oh boy, I'm gonna get in trouble. But when people say we can't have gay marriage because then what's going to happen? Next thing you know, someone's going to want to marry a dog, or marry some sort of animal. I'm like, no, that's not what that means at all. But I don't know, it's not the same idea. But this notion of that was you got to have both. Good analogy. It was not a close analogy. Never mind. But the idea being that, of course, Nick Young isn't a superstar because he doesn't play like one. And you got to start there, and then we can kind of go and see how we go. Now, the other thing that's interesting is the shoe sales because that is is less connected to charisma and commercial appeal and all that stuff, or jersey sales. And certainly Kawhi, I think, right, he's way up there, isn't he? With jersey sale,
Probably. I haven't looked at his numbers, but I mean, I don't think he like. So I know Kyrie Irving's like a top 5 jersey sales and sneaker guy. So that's a superstar.
Okay, now Kyrie is a great thing, right? Because no one does better commercials than him, right? The Uncle Drew stuff is awesome, and he's like an actor. He almost could be an actor, right? Like he knows how to do that. And I mean, I don't know. The dude is what was he top 6 in scoring this year? Has all world ability, the basket. Doesn't you got the assist? So I don't know. I mean, he's got to be close, right? You don't think Kawhi Irving is close to being a superstar?
No, he's not, because I get it. He's a very good player, but we know he has flaws. He doesn't play defense. And obviously, I mean, playing with LeBron James masks a lot of his issues. I say this. Kyrie Irving was that weapon you can deploy in the finals. He's not the guy to get you to the finals. That was LeBron James. To me, that matters. That matters that he's more of a supplementary player than a big gun.
I don't know. Dude won Game 7.
Okay, but how did he get to Game 7? Who did all the other work? You know what I'm saying? Like I can't.
Yeah. Well, listen, he did some serious work as well, right? Like I know LeBron's numbers were great, but so were Kyrie's.
Hey, those first 3 games he was non-existent. So what are we doing? You see what I'm saying? You can't ignore the fact he was almost non-existent the first 3 games of that series, and then he woke up and got Game 4.
Well, LeBron was not non-existent, but he wasn't very good either in those first 3 games either.
Oh no! Don't get me started. We can break down that series too, because LeBron was pretty solid that whole series. LeBron was LeBron that whole series. He kicked it up a notch and went supernova those final 3 or 4 games, but no, he was very good that series.
I have to go back and remind myself, but as I remember doing that breakdown, when Draymond got suspended and that Game 5 opened up all the pick and roll for him, that's the supernova. But geez, as I remember, his defense was really bad the first few games, and I think I did a video on it. And then I mean, maybe what do you want to say? His numbers were like what he was averaging 28 and 10 and 7 or something like that, something really good.
I mean. Something really good, something like that.
All right, well, we'll save it for the next one. We can look at it again because that could piggyback on our Russ video. We have to get all our research in line and in order to go at it. So, well, James, great stuff. As always, looking forward to every Wednesday. I know people really love these things. You and I going at it too. It's always nice. Dave and I are much more are way too civil to each other. So we'll have to try and tap into that some more. Maybe we'll end up being like. We can do our version of Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd or something.
No, hey, you know what? Hey, Nick Wright, I hope you listen to this, man. I really respect what you do, my brother. But, yeah, neither one of us could be Colin Cowherd because neither one of us are both of us have a lot of NBA smarts, so we'll never be that level. Right.
All right. Well, listen, I finally got someone to give me. I'm one step above Bayless and Cowherd. I'll take it. That's great as long as I'm above them. So anyhow, well, you are way above them. You're going to get Nick on your podcast, aren't you?
I hope so. Yeah, Nick. I mean, I haven't talked to him about it yet, but I'll reach out to him. I'd love to have him on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll have to all tune into it, hear how that goes, and you should engage him on the Kawhi thing because I know I took my gloves off on that one. I don't know why. I was being a gracious host, I suppose, but get on it. So anyway, great stuff. Thanks for coming on, James, and we will see you over on Twitter, and then next week we'll be right back at it.
Me and you, Coach, we're gonna go at it. Let's rumble.
All right.
Have me on.
And don't forget, sports fans, at P-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You win? Are you in, James?
Coach, I'm in.